tell me about how people can kind of find that courage without necessarily having the hard knocks that deliver the courage to your door.
The longer it takes us to realize our own unique 1%, the longer it takes for us to realize success and happiness. If you truly are seeking to be on a path of, really acknowledging your purpose, accepting the personal agency that you have to deliver on that, I think that's part of the courage, is having that inner knowing, but then taking action.
Welcome, everybody. Juliet Peters, Her Table, Her Rules. Super happy that you're here today. And I'm really excited about this conversation with Daniela Nicole, because we're going to talk today a little bit about the kind of startup ecosystem and the work that you've done. I really kind of want to focus in on sort of the challenges and some of the ways you've overcome the challenges. So let's start sort of at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about kind of your background, where you came from, and where you're at now.
Absolutely. So happy to be here. Thank you. So I grew up in Connecticut, was raised by an Italian immigrant family. My grandfather came over with not much in his pocket, but a heart full of love. And he actually created a construction company when he came over. And I call him the OG incubator in our family, because he hired a lot of those immigrants who then spun out to create their own businesses. So my entrepreneurial spirit is really attributed to him and the choices that he made. Lived in Connecticut until I was about 20, moved to Arizona in 2004, my first time, and I worked in the corporate relocation and moving industry. Saw how archaic that industry was, and was had an opportunity to co-found a company that was really aimed to disrupt that space. So we were like Kayak for corporate relocation, a moving marketplace, if you will. And I moved out of Arizona, actually had a chance to live in San Francisco for 6 years, and Miami for 2 years. During that time, we got to a Series B milestone. I had 2 children. We were living the dream in some regard. And it was May of 2022. And earlier that month, my husband and I ended up separating. He was the CEO of the company. And a couple weeks, thank you. Yeah. And a couple weeks later, he got terminated from the company. And 6 months later, I got pushed out of the company. Oh. So this was the same year as our Series B. We raised a total of $33 million and valued at over $100 million. And it was a hostile takeover. And, I wasn't privy to all the things the CEO was doing, one of those stories. And I share that because, the startup world can look very attractive, but I think there's a lot of vanity that's in there. Yeah. And most of the time there's, things that are not so positive that are happening behind the scenes. So that has been the catalyst for me in the work that I'm doing today. So during that time, I became a single mom overnight, had to get a court-approved relocation back to Arizona. I moved here in 2023, and it was time for reinvention. So really looking back at, over the last 10 years, the experiences that I had. Now I'm in Phoenix. What is my highest and best use being in this community again? So 2023, literally, I met with as many people as I possibly could in town. Everyone was so welcoming and generous with their time and helping me to understand a lay of the land. And it really became evident to me that we needed a independent kind of public-private initiative to help bridge the gaps of what early stage founders needed here. And having the experiences living in the coastal cities, access is available there. You have the critical mass of the resources. As an interior market, it's a bit more challenging.
Let's talk for a second about being a woman in that space, because it still is not that common, right? And we've had some bad examples, of people who've gone to jail for their fraudulent activities, right? Which I think has certainly not been a great thing, right, for women at the top of technological type of companies, right? But how, kind of tell me about, obviously with the company that you were pushed out of, you were kind of a husband and wife team, which there are a lot of people who have husband and wife team businesses, right? But how when you started down the road of reinvention, how did you sort of deal with the whole issue of being a female founder, right? Yeah. In still what is a very male-dominated world. funding, scaling, a lot of those things people look at and they are very male heavy.
Yeah. And no, it's absolutely true. And the stats are, it doesn't make sense, right? 2% of venture capital going to females,
Yes.
yet we're running the most profitable companies. Right. Doesn't make sense.
No.
So, gosh, during that stage of reinvention, there's a lot of grief, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of grief in the push and pull of like knowing your worth, but also seeing externally how the system and environment was not set up to recognize that.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lot of days where, you know, I brought in 85% of the revenue as my corporate relationships from 9 years in corporate. Amazon was our largest account. Yet, you know, I was constantly being manipulated by narcissistic CEO, which is very, very, very common.
Yeah.
So, you know, the toxicity that ends up coming out of some of those circumstances requires us to really relook at our true essence.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a lot of internal work of just what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I meant to do? And how can I align what I'm doing now to be more centered with that? You know, I think disrupting a space that I had domain expertise in was absolutely part of what I needed to do, but I don't think it was the sustainable long-term thing that I'm here to do. And, you know, growing up in an Italian family, the art of gathering is innate to me.
Yeah.
And I think in such an AI-driven world that we're in right now, we need more of the in-person gatherings, and especially when it relates to startups, connecting talent, all of these things that I think still we have a lot of gaps here locally.
Are there, so tell me about that, the gaps. For those of you out there, we're talking right now about Phoenix, but there are other cities that where, you know, I can think of Salt Lake, Austin, places where new startup ecosystems have been born and raised. And we were talking off camera a little bit before. When I first started my law firm, my goal was really to work with as many women founders and women-owned businesses as I could. But it was very clear to me that at that time, when our startup ecosystem was very, very immature, there just wasn't the amount of female founders or really businesses where they were at a level where they could really pay an attorney, right? Mm-hmm. So I had to pivot a little bit my business away. But what has grown in the interim has really been amazing. And it's a testament to a lot of people in there really working on building a community around that. I think when I first kind of started, I saw the ecosystem as, you know, a self-fulfilling. Nobody was really making any money. They were really servicing an ecosystem, right? I think we're long past that now. But tell me where you've moved your work to really kind of capitalize, if you will, on what is now the maturity of an ecosystem. Still not where it needs to be, right? We're never going to likely be New York or the Bay. But I think we've proven that great ecosystems can grow in places that are not on the coast. But tell me a little bit about where you're really focusing your work.
Yeah, we're really focusing in on the tech talent nucleus, right? So if we don't have that cultivation and retention of tech talent locally, it's going to be very challenging for a lot of these founders to build and scale and stay here when they exit. And at the end of the day, that's what you've seen in a lot of those more mature ecosystems, Utah and beyond, right? Is like there's that consortium of founders who've had those exits that then create the Silicon Slopes movement, right? Becomes that flywheel for others to be able to hopefully have that great outcome as well. So we really are focused on tech talent. We throw 2 times a year a tech talent summit, which is a modern career fair, if you will. So startups that are hiring, bringing job seekers in person to really cultivate those relationships, summit style. So there's a lot of different thought leadership panels and activities that are happening. This year in November, we're going to be focusing on defense tech, health tech, software, and AI here locally in Phoenix. So
tell me a little bit about AI in Phoenix. Where are we at on that? Because I have seen a lot of sort of burgeoning younger companies. There is certainly a race on the AI front, right? Yeah. To have a vehicle that's monetizable, but what I understand from AI is the startup costs on AI to train are astronomical. So it's almost impossible to bootstrap on an AI company. Is that kind of what your perspective is?
Yeah, absolutely seeing that.
Yeah.
I think the way that Arizona is innovating with AI is rather interesting. I mean, ASU obviously is such a leader in innovation and having a lot of the curriculum and degrees now that are helping to support that. You're seeing more hackathons coming to fruition that are really aimed at solving real world problems here locally. Support from Mayo Clinic and their MedTech Accelerator, right? So there's just so much accessibility for those sectors here with, the leadership and the resources to be able to grow and scale.
Let's talk about accelerators for a moment, because they certainly, in the city that we're in, Phoenix, and in every other city that I know about, have really had it's a rocky road to be an accelerator, right? Mm-hmm. Some good companies come out of accelerators. It's a great way for people to kind of start, low barrier to entry mostly. But what is kind of the next evolution of really taking kind of these and incubating these smaller companies into something that's scalable and exitable, if you will?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think accelerators are a great choice for the right timing and the right stage of a company. Here locally, we don't have the Techstars, the YC, but we have organizations like Phoenix Forward, which they're really focused on helping to make Phoenix a top software city. So they have an accelerator really focused on that. And they've designed it really, really great from a stage perspective. So depending on where you're at from an ARR standpoint, stages 1 through 7, there's a curriculum, there's a community that's really intended to help you grow and scale. So to your point, as you enter a certain experience and you're incubated for a certain period of time, there's always that continuum of support to keep leveling up. And at the end of the day, right, we have to continue to surround ourselves with people who have gone farther to really help and mentor where we want to head.
Let's talk for a second on tech talent, because you mentioned that as kind of an inhibitor. One of the things, and I have somebody who's in the young 20s, and so I have a lot of people in my ambit that are in their 20s, mm-hmm. right? It's a tough job market out there. And so there are a lot of people who would love to be doing something, startup related, do something tech related, but it's almost near impossible to have somebody break in. And I mean people that are, Stanford grads, mm-hmm. and it doesn't matter where you went to school, right? Yeah. So what kind of, what do we do about that? Because I can see among my 25-year-old, for example, his peers, it's highly discouraging.
Mm-hmm. It is. I meet job seekers every single day here that are very talented people. And when I hear about the experiences that they're having, like the worst thing we can have in our community is for talented creatives to be discouraged about building and working, right? So I feel this deeply, and we're doing something about it. So we're going to actually start hosting startup talent readiness workshops to really hone in on how to break in, how to break through. But what I'm really encouraging right now is, while you're looking for that next full-time thing, maybe it's time for you to build your own thing. Yeah. Right? So, and then maybe it's a race to see which one takes off first. Yeah. Because gosh, it's like the best time ever for us to build with the availability of resources that we have right now. And maybe the way that you're getting revenue and income is looking different than you did before. It might not be that full-time gig. So that's what I'm encouraging, is kind of this parallel path of like, okay, really being able to reflect on, where do you have domain expertise? What really energizes you as an individual? And what can you turn into a product or service that can serve the world? Whereas still building those paths of, meeting HR leaders and CEOs of startups, great, and encourage that. But I wouldn't put all of your eggs in that, especially to have the firsthand experience yourself as a founder, I think just pays dividends to what you end up doing later and keep iterating and growing.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, which is because I see women who are wildly talented, and they might have a side gig they're doing, and it's really about giving the community and the courage. It's kind of by igniting that fire that women get to bring their really amazing gifts to the world. Maybe, again, you got to build your own table. Don't be waiting to be invited to somebody else's table, because we spent a lot of years and a lot of decades doing that. And I think we're at a time where everything is kind of fractured. Right. And those paths are not easy to see. So I think sometimes it really is about kind of learning, what do I have that are my gifts that I can bring to the world, and learn to monetize that and not be ashamed of monetizing it. And I think, for women and maybe young people, because they're not getting they're really having a hard time cracking in. I can't tell you, everybody I know's kids that are in that age group are underemployed. So they're employed, right? They're either employed part-time or they're underemployed in a job they shouldn't be in, but they're holding on desperately because they got to have some money coming in the door, right? So, I think that courage is really critical. Talk to me about, so you had forced courage, right? And sometimes that's how courage sort of arrives, right? You don't know you have courage, and all of a sudden your life circumstances are such that you better find the courage, find the stomach, or you're not, you had kids that were depending on you. So tell me about how people can kind of find that courage without necessarily having the hard knocks that deliver the courage to your door.
Yeah. I always say the longer it takes us to realize our own unique 1%, the longer it takes for us to realize success and happiness, honestly. So it's like, until you really sit with, this is me, like, your true essence, but there's that inner resistance sometimes, that imposter syndrome that creeps in of like, you're not good enough, you haven't had the experience enough. But I just think it's interesting how it keeps surfacing in our life, right? And when it does, listen to that and act on it. And even if it's that little step, it does not have to be perfect. You're never going to be ready. But I think if you truly are seeking to be on a path of really acknowledging your purpose, accepting the personal agency that you have to deliver on that. I think that's part of the courage is having that inner knowing, but then taking action. Yeah.
So what's next for you? I mean, what are you working on doing? And what, you've had an evolution, and it's been a bumpy one. You haven't, it's not without its pain points. So what's getting you jazzed about, either working in this ecosystem that you're a part of, something that you're seeing among women in this ecosystem? Tell me what it is that's really driving you.
No, absolutely. So I feel super blessed to be back in Phoenix during this time. There's been an incredible amount of work that's been done over the last decade from so many organizations. And I really believe these tech talent summits that happen 2 times a year are going to continue to grow. We've had 3 of them so far. Everyone gets sold out. Our last one had 500 people. We're targeting 1,000 people in November. So would love to see that continue and grow. And I hope to bring on, more on my team that can help see that mission through as well. On the flip side, I just started a Substack called Bridgework. That is really a body of work that's intended to talk about the setbacks and how it's really just intended to be brick after brick after brick of how we lay the foundation to what we want to do next. And again, attributed to my grandfather, who was a bricklayer, right? And, my vision for that is being able to attract a community of individuals who want to hold this level of accountability as an individual, but collectively, where I'm a person who loves to travel. My ex lives in Eastern Europe, so my kids are there most of the time. And in the summer, I've been kind of piloting what a digital nomad experience could be in Southern Italy. So I'm going to have an offering for next June in Southern Italy to really embrace the cultural aspect. And I think having more of that global mindset just helps to expand your purpose and how big the world is and how you can play an instrumental part in being in it. So bridge work, I'll be spending more time on that as well.
That's awesome. In Sicily?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. It's so fabulous. Go there if you haven't been there. It's really, really fabulous. I went there last October.
Sicily and
go
Calabria.
Back.
So
Yeah,
my parents
so
are from,
awesome.
Southern, right? Can't go
so
wrong.
Awesome, right? So, but that idea, I think, of really kind of unhooking from what is kind of maybe a more traditional life, right? Where you have a 9-to-5 job. I mean, you're kind of doing the antithesis of that. And I think there's such power in that. But a lot of times we don't see that, right? Sometimes you just kind of have to take the leap. I don't know what that phrase is, leap and the ground comes up or some such thing like
the
that.
Chasm.
Yeah, so, right. But boy, that's really hard. And I think it's particularly hard for women who are really kind of feel the heaviness and weight of the roles of their life. Right?
Yeah, motherhood and ambition. Yeah. We didn't, it wasn't too long ago where we didn't have a choice.
Right.
We have a choice.
Yeah.
And doing both is, I think, attainable, right? But it's really, the empowering state for me is like, we get to design it.
Yeah.
We get to design from, a 12-month perspective. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
What does that 5-year, 10-year look like? And I just think there's no better state to be in than life design.
Well, how can people reach you if they want to get a hold of you?
So my Instagram is Scale with Purpose, and Freeway's site is freewayphx.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time on Her Table, Her Rules, and make sure you subscribe. Thanks.